Anna Thompson hadn't planned to come back to Oak Ridge, not after how she left it all behind. The small Washington town held too many memories she had tried to bury, especially memories of Luke Miller. But when her mother's health took a sudden turn, life didn't give her a choice. She packed up her quiet, city-worn life in Chicago and drove 12 hours back to the place that once held her whole heart, and broke it too. The air smelled like autumn, sharp and earthy, and as she drove past the old diner, the library steps, where she first kissed Luke, and the familiar curve of the lake road, something inside her stirred, a mix of longing, nerves, and regret. She hadn't seen Luke in 6 years. She didn't even know if he still lived there, but part of her, some stubborn part, was hoping he didn't. She didn't think she could face him, not after disappearing without a word, leaving nothing behind but a silence even he didn't try to fill. But fate has a way of placing people right where your heart isn't ready. On her first morning back, tired and jet-lagged from grief, Anna stopped at the small-town grocery store to pick up a few things. She was pushing a cart down the produce aisle, barely thinking, when she looked up. And there he was. Luke. He was standing by the apples, tanned from the sun, his flannel sleeves rolled halfway up, a quiet stillness about him that made everything else blur out. His hair was a little shorter, the beard a little thicker, but those same honey-brown eyes caught hers and held. For a second, the world fell away. Time hadn't erased him, and it hadn't prepared her for this moment. Her heart thudded in her chest like it remembered what her mind was trying to forget. He blinked once, slowly, like he wasn't sure if she was real. "Anna?" His voice was low and careful, like he was afraid to say too much. She nodded. It was all she could manage. He smiled, small, surprised, familiar. "I heard you moved to Chicago." "I did," she said, voice almost a whisper. "I was there for a while." He shifted his weight, leaned slightly on the cart, the way he always used to when they talked for hours by her porch swing. "You home for a bit?" She hesitated, heart still racing. "Just for a while," she said. It was easier to lie than explain. Easier than saying, "I don't know. I might be back for good, but I'm not sure I can stay if you're here." But that moment, standing in the aisle under the humming grocery store lights, surrounded by apples and quiet memories, felt heavier than any goodbye. The kind of moment that pulls the past right up to your skin. Luke didn't say more. He just gave her that look, the one that used to make her feel seen, like no one else in the world existed but the two of them. And then he walked away. Anna stood there long after he left, staring at nothing, her breath shallow, her chest tight. She hadn't known seeing him would feel like this, like something unfinished, unresolved, like a door she thought she'd locked suddenly swinging open. She told herself not to read into it. It was just a moment, a few words. But deep down, something had shifted. The past had found her, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face what still lived in it. Because sometimes love doesn't die. It just waits for the right moment to be remembered. And Anna had a feeling this wasn't the last time she'd be seeing Luke Miller. Not by a long shot. In the days that followed, it was like fate kept nudging Anna and Luke back into each other's orbit, as if the universe had a soft spot for unfinished stories. Oak Ridge was small, too small to avoid someone you once loved. She saw him everywhere. At the hardware store, standing in line behind her with paint on his hands. on the walking trail near the lake, running in the opposite direction, slowing, when he saw her, offering a gentle nod that stayed with her for hours. Once, she even caught sight of him outside the small-town clinic, leaning on his truck as she walked her mother out after an appointment. Their eyes met in silence. He didn't come over and she didn't wave, but something passed between them, a weight, a memory, a question neither dared to ask. They weren't strangers, not really, but it had been too long to pretend they were still who they used to be. And yet, every time they crossed paths, the air around them shifted, as if time paused to give them a chance to rewrite something they'd left undone. Anna tried to convince herself it didn't mean anything, that it was just coincidence. But deep down, she knew better. The truth was, the ache hadn't faded. It had simply gone quiet. One rainy evening, after driving her mom home and feeling too restless to go inside, Anna found herself pulling into the lot of the old diner, Maple and Main, the same one where Luke used to meet her for pancakes after late-night drives. She wasn't hungry. She just needed to breathe somewhere that didn't smell like antiseptic or feel like sorrow. But when she stepped inside, her heart stopped. Luke was there, alone in a booth near the window, a half-empty mug of coffee in front of him. He looked up as the bell above the door chimed, and for a brief second, neither of them moved. Then he smiled, soft, surprised, and a little sad. "Hungry?" he asked. She shook her head, a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "Not really, just tired." Without hesitation, he slid over in the booth. "Then come be tired here." She sat down, and the silence between them felt familiar, but different, now. Like two people who still knew each other's rhythms, but were afraid to play the old song. Outside, the rain tapped against the glass, a slow rhythm that filled the gaps where their words didn't reach. They didn't talk about what had happened all those years ago, not yet. Instead, they spoke about small things, how the town had barely changed, how Mrs. Duval still ran the post office, how the leaves this year turned earlier than usual. But beneath every sentence was a tension, an electricity that hadn't dimmed with time. Luke kept glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking, and she found herself doing the same. After a long pause, he turned to her with a tenderness that caught her off guard. "You look good, Anna." She blinked, her fingers curling around the warm coffee cup. "You don't have to say that," she said quietly, her voice barely steady. But he just looked at her, really looked. "I'm not saying it because I have to." And then came the shift, the pause, the moment that changed everything. He leaned in slightly, his eyes steady, full of something she wasn't ready for. And then he asked her a question she didn't expect, one she hadn't prepared her heart for, one that would open the door to everything they had buried. He asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you stayed?" And just like that, the quiet between them wasn't quiet anymore. It was loud with everything they never said. Anna didn't know how to answer him, not right away. When Luke asked her that question, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you stayed?" the world around her seemed to slow, like even the rain outside the diner window had. Paused to hear her response. Her fingers tightened around the coffee mug, but her voice caught in her throat. Because yes, she had wondered. 1,000 times. In the quiet moments of her life in Chicago, when the city lights flickered through her apartment window, and she lay awake at 2 a.m., feeling something missing. She had wondered while watching other people fall in love, build lives, share smiles in grocery stores and soft laughter at dinner tables. And most of all, she had wondered during lonely holidays, when she went home to no one and thought of Luke's warm arms, his patient eyes, and how everything ended before it ever truly got to begin. But now, sitting across from him in a booth, where they once made silly bets over pancakes, she couldn't bring herself to say it out loud. Luke didn't push. He just watched her, his expression quiet and open, like he had carried that question for years and finally needed to let it breathe. "I'm not trying to make you feel bad," he said gently, reading her silence. I've thought about it. A lot. About us. About how it all just stopped." Anna finally looked at him, and there was something raw in his eyes. Something too honest to ignore. "I didn't stop loving you, Anna. I never did." The words were soft, but they landed hard, hitting a place in her chest that hadn't been touched in years. She wanted to cry, or run, or reach across the table and hold his hand and beg time to turn back. Instead, she whispered, "You can't say that." But he didn't flinch. "Why not?" he asked, like he truly didn't understand. "Because..." She paused, staring at the cup in front of her. "Because I don't know how to answer that. Because I left without saying goodbye. Because I was scared and selfish, and didn't think I was enough for you." Her voice cracked, and Luke's hand moved slightly across the table, not touching hers, just close. Close enough to remind her he was still there. "You were enough," he said softly. "You were everything. I didn't understand back then why you left, but I never stopped wishing you'd come back." Anna closed her eyes. The truth was, she had left because it was easier than staying and watching him build a life she didn't think she could be part of. He had dreams, big ones, and she had fears. She had convinced herself she was doing him a favor by walking away. But now, looking at the way he still looked at her like she mattered, she wasn't so sure anymore. The silence between them stretched, again. But it wasn't awkward. It was heavy with emotion, with the kind of love that never truly disappears, even after years apart. Luke finally leaned back, a small sigh escaping his lips. "You don't have to answer now," he said. "I just needed you to know. I've been holding it in too long." Anna nodded slowly, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't even know if she was strong enough to try again. But in that moment, she knew this. What they had wasn't over. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, love like theirs didn't end. It waited, quietly, patiently, until the right moment returned. And that moment had just begun. That night, Anna sat by the bedroom window of her childhood home, wrapped in her father's old sweater, listening to the soft rustle of the trees as the wind moved through them like a whisper from another life. The house was quiet, her mother already asleep down the hall, but Anna's mind wouldn't rest. Luke's question still echoed through her chest. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you stayed?" She had carried that question silently for years, but hearing it out loud had stirred something deep inside her, something she wasn't ready to face before. Now, it was all she could think about. The way his eyes searched hers, the steadiness in his voice, the warmth that still lived in him even after all that time. She had left Oak Ridge thinking she was doing the right thing, chasing freedom, chasing herself, maybe even protecting him from the mess she believed she was. But sitting there now, watching the moonlight stretch across the wooden floor of her old room, she realized what she had really done. She ran away from love because it scared her. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running. The next morning, Anna found herself walking along the path near the lake, the same path she and Luke used to sneak off to on summer evenings. The water was still, quiet, like it was listening. She didn't know if he'd be there. She hadn't called, hadn't texted, but something told her he might come. She sat on the old bench near the shore, pulled her coat tighter, and let herself remember. The way Luke used to carry her on his back when she got tired. The way he kissed her forehead like it meant something. The way he never tried to change her, just waited for her to believe she was enough. And then, through the thin morning light, she saw him, walking slowly, hands in his pockets, eyes already locked on hers. No smile, no words, just a quiet understanding in his face that made her heart stutter. He sat beside her without saying anything at first. The silence between them was familiar now, gentle, honest. After a long moment, she spoke. "I left because I was afraid I'd only hold you back. You had so much ahead of you, and I didn't know how to fit into that future." Luke looked at her, his expression steady. "I didn't need you to fit into anything, Anna. I just wanted you with me." Her throat tightened, but she kept talking. "I've built a life, but it always felt temporary, like I was waiting for something to come back, or someone." She finally turned to him, eyes filled with emotion. "I don't know what I want. Luke, I don't have all the answers." His hand reached over then, not fast, not desperate, just sure. His fingers brushed hers and her heart leapt. "You don't have to know," he said softly. "You just have to stay." She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But she didn't pull her hand away either. And in that moment, sitting on the edge of everything they once were, and everything they still could be, Anna realized something. Love doesn't always come crashing in with fireworks. Sometimes it returns like this, with a soft voice, a quiet question, and the courage to stop running. Maybe they wouldn't get it all right this time. Maybe it would still be messy, still be hard. But she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of loving him. Not of being loved. And as the wind moved gently across the lake, carrying the sound of their laughter into the morning air, Anna finally let her heart answer the question she once didn't know how to face. She stayed.